If you were to make an interactive puzzle game, there are a lot of ways you could go about it. You could use a website, you could make a YouTube video connecting to other YouTube videos, you could make a video game, even an interactive comic. RubyQuest did something entirely different. RubyQuest wanted to be participatory in real time, so it ran its story in the only way it could in 2008, through 4chan. RubyQuest ran from December 2008 to March 2009 on 4chan's traditional games board. The game's artist, known only as the Weaver, would start a thread in the board with a drawn image and small descriptive text. The other commentators would post what to do next. We would then, from the mass of gibberish and comments, pull one to continue the story, and with a new image, the story would continue. The entire narrative would span 31 threads on the board and hundreds of images. These threads would be archived before they completely disappeared from 4chan itself, later turned into flash games and websites and other ways of preserving the story. The artwork was extremely simple line work, with characters' names and likenesses being pulled from the game Animal Crossing, only because the art was so simple, a rabbit and cat ears at least allowed readers to identify the characters. The story was a somewhat horror puzzle game and was very well received by the community. What's notable about RubyQuest is that it was by its nature brief, contained, and relied on its fans to a point that they were responsible for much of the story's humor, decisions made, and eventually major changes had to be made to the setting to manage the decisions that the community made during the narrative. RubyQuest is a fascinating example of fandom, because by design the fans participate in the story, and to be a fan was to participate in the story right alongside the artist. No one has been able to really enjoy the full experience of RubyQuest since March 2009. Any comic or flash game is an adaptation of the source material, which was fundamentally a participatory narrative run by a community of anonymous people. Jenkins has described participatory culture as one where not every member must contribute, but all must believe they are free to contribute when ready, and that what they contribute will appropriately be valued. Now, of course, in the case of 4chan, appropriately valued is better translated to equally hated or distrusted or just pointless. John Fisk also argued that subcultures like fandoms tend to create hierarchical limitations on who can participate, such as older fans or those who create fan works being able to control discussions more than newer fans, through moderation or pushing particular readings or character interpretations. With RubyQuest, a question occurs about it as a piece of work, if it had a fandom, or if what looked like fandom was just a result of it being a participatory event. The community certainly created significant amounts of artwork during threads and discussed the story as it continued in between threads. But once the story completed, it disappeared almost immediately. 4chan as a whole abhors a hierarchy by design. The tripcode system to allow the Weaver to be identifiable was highly controversial in the community. It is a very kind way of saying what they would have said. RubyQuest revolved around Weaver's work, but the entirely anonymous fandom had no ability to create a hierarchy, unlike most fandoms. The anonymous nature of 4chan was a benefit to participation. Someone could have read from the very first thread, commenting and discussing in every single one, and never being considered important. Someone else could have stayed quiet for the entirety of every thread, all 31, and comment for the very first and last time on the last thread, and their comment could have been taken as the most important. Both participants had the same weight. Participation was an even ground for all participants. The Weaver is an odd exception as someone who is a participant in a special manner, but still had limited control over the story. RubyQuest had its time. It flourished, and it quickly faded away. The participatory nature of it makes it difficult for a fan base to exist after it fades. If you participated, you helped author it. If you were part of discussions on what to do next, you were participating. You were authoring the work. There was fan art and fan fiction while RubyQuest existed, but no more was made shortly after the story ended. There is no fun name for fans or associated symbols, no merchandise, there's no convention for it to belong to or have a stand at. Even if there was, the Weaver wouldn't be there. Very little is known about the central participant of RubyQuest. Weaver only wanted to tell a story. All of this is very important to consider, because at its core there never was a fandom for RubyQuest, just participants. Anyone can go enjoy RubyQuest's adaptations and become fans of those, but they cannot participate. And RubyQuest was a participatory narrative. And it's hard to judge whether you can be a fan if you're a participant as well.